What's going on, everyone? Episode 83 of Locker Talk Live. I'm your host, Wac. Joining alongside with me today is Jackson. Getting my stuff set up here. And today we take a look at the regional finals happening in UAL, maybe even talking about some TAP state championships. I know Fort Bend Christian is going to be playing this weekend, so I'm sure Jackson will talk about that. But before we talk and get into the nitty gritty of the sports, got to talk to Jackson, man. How you doing? Oh, you are muted, man. Did you mute yourself?
I did.
There you
It's
go.
been a busy Thanksgiving week last week. Went out and covered some games Friday and Saturday, and it's just been a busy week as things pick back up, and we're towards the end of the Texas high school football playoffs. And these are the games that we want. These are the games that are always most interesting. And then, of course, these matchups set up some big time potential semifinal matchups. So very excited for this week's playoff games as well.
Yeah, this is kind of rematch city, if you will. There are a lot of rematches happening this week. This is where if you have some really good district teams that the regional finals usually where they meet. Yeah, that rare case last week where you had all the teams with in Wimberley's district meeting up, and now they get to them and Malaga get to do that again. Let's start with probably the biggest rematch in the city of Houston, I would say. That's North Shore taking on Tascasita. I heard David Amador is a little banged up as well. Does this bode well for Tascasita? They played North Shore really tight. I really feel like their defense kind of, I don't want to say fell asleep, but at the end of the game when they kind of needed them most, North Shore was able to beat Tascasita's defense. Does that happen again, or do you think Tascasita learns from their mistakes, comes in and gets this win and heads on to the state semis? What do you think, Jackson?
Yeah, I think this is an Atascocita team that's been able to make adjustments all season. They've played their only two losses are to Katy, who's undefeated right now. They lost to them on a 2-minute touchdown in the fourth quarter, and then they lost to North Shore late, kind of midway through the fourth quarter. So they've been in these big time games before. Obviously, last year they played North Shore in the same exact round after playing them in district. This is round four of them playing each other the past 2 years, basically the same time and about the same time of the season. So I think these Atascocita kids are definitely up for the challenge. I think if there were a year that someone could dethrone the Mustangs, this could be the year. I think the Eagles have the team to do it. But on the North Shore side of the ball, you got to hope that David Amador is able to go and get going on offense. He's a big part of that offense, but even without him, you've got that two-headed monster with Rashad Johnson and Hardman at running back. So it's going to be a great game. I mean, the atmosphere is going to be absolutely insane. I'll be out at that game tomorrow, so very excited to watch that game and see who's going to be coming out of Houston to potentially play Westlake in the semifinal.
That's right. Let's go ahead and talk about that game real quick. Westlake will take on Brennan. Brennan, of course, kind of got over that proverbial hump when it comes to San Antonio teams. San Antonio teams had not had the best of luck against Lake Travis. I think dating back to the late 2000s. And I know over the last, I think, 5 or 6 years, they were 14-0. Lake Travis was against San Antonio schools, but Brennan got it done with their defense. I mean, that game, I was there, I covered that game. That game was, Brennan's defense really came to play. I think it was 2 turnovers they caused. Game was late until the game was close into the fourth quarter. Brennan scores a couple late touchdowns to really pull away at the end. And I've said this throughout the playoffs. I think if you can stop Westlake's offense, you're going to have a chance to win that game. I watched them against New Braunfels in the by district no area round. I'm sorry, area round. I believe it was it area by district. Yeah, area. Let's say area round. Yes, is when New Braunfels and Westlake played, and New Braunfels was able to get Westlake off the field a couple of times. It took a little while to get their offense going for Westlake, and I think if Brennan can do that, they're going to have a chance to stay in this game, especially if Ashton DeBow and Avron Carter, the running back, can really get this game going for the offense of Brennan. So, I think you still have to think Westlake's the favorite. They've won 53 games in a row for a reason, but there's some windows there, and if Brennan capitalize on those windows, they're going to make that game close and interesting. What other games that you see? I have a couple of games I want to talk about for sure, but what other games are you seeing out there, Jackson, that interest you? I will say that North Shore Tascasita game. I think Tascasita does stand a really good chance. If there's going to be a time to take them off, now's the time. But what other games out there are you seeing that you really like?
Yeah, I'm looking at the South Lake Carroll Denton Geyer game in 6A D2. I think this is an awesome matchup. You've got undefeated versus undefeated. You've got South Lake Carroll has been a powerhouse. You've got Geyer who's kind of become that powerhouse program now. Uh, and they're playing for the chance to make it to that semifinal game. I think this is going to be a great matchup in the DFW area. You're going to get to see Owen Allen at running back for Carroll. You're going to get to see Denton Geyer with Peyton Bowen in the return game and at safety. And then you're going to see, of course, Oklahoma commit quarterback Jackson Arnold. So I think that's a game that I've circled. I think that game, the North Shore Atascocita game, both of those might be the biggest matchups this weekend. But I'm also looking at that Dripping Springs Vandergrift game. I think that's going to be another one to watch out for. As I've been saying, and we've kind of been talking about, can Dripping Springs, now that they moved up into this 6A district with Westlake and Lake Travis, could they be the next kind of Austin area team to do what those two programs have done? And so far, they've kind of shown us that they're getting a rematch with Vandergrift, who they played in the first game of the season. So I think those three games in particular are ones I'll be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, that game tomorrow between Vandergrift and Dripping Springs is going to be one to watch. I mean, you think week one, Dripping Springs wins on a last second field goal. These two, and I think I said this. So we actually recorded a show last week, but in my haste to get to some of those games, I forgot to release it. So, but one of the things I said was these teams aren't the same teams they were in week one. Both of these teams are vastly improved. Braden Buchanan has really found his groove with his connection with Miles Coleman on offense for Vandergrift, and then of course on Dripping Springs side you have Austin Novosad, and I mean, how do you pick against him at this point? They've been playing lights out. Like so, the last loss came to Westlake, in which that game was close heading into the fourth quarter. Vandergrift, they struggled last week in the first half against Harlan before pulling away in the second half. So can Dripping Springs jump on Vandergrift early? If they can do that, I think that might favor them. But then you have to realize Vandergrift's definitely licking their chops, hoping that they can get that revenge. I like that pick of yours for sure. Another game that I think obviously I think we got Scott just texted us right now. We're live, of course, and he said our comments are turned off. I didn't know their comments were turned off, Scott. I'm sorry about that. I'll try and work on that for you. We just didn't want you jumping in and hogging the chat. But another game to think of: Shiner or Furio rematch their district opponents for this year and next year. That is going to be a great game. They're going to pack the stands. You're going to look at this 2A game and think, is this a state kind of final state championship? Because the stands are going to be packed. Let me tell you, I remember last year, I think it was over 10,000 plus. So these fans are going to show up for this game. It's going to be great. Refugio won the district matchup. Game was close into the fourth quarter. I think Shiner had a lead heading into the fourth quarter before Refugio pulled away. But Freo's gotten better since then. They've steadily gotten better all these years. They're trying to get back to that state tournament. The team that always gets in their way is Shiner. What do you think about that game, Jackson?
Yeah, I mean, I like Shiner in this one. This is a Shiner team that's made this state game and has kind of built their little run here the past couple of years, of course, with the Brooks brothers, but now it's just Dalton there. And I think that this is a Shiner team that knows what to do once they get to the playoffs. I think that it's going to be a great matchup. Obviously, facing a district opponent in the playoffs, there's always a little bit more juice there. Maybe it could potential rivalry depending on how your district works. But I think that Shiner, with their playoff experience, will be able to get it done.
Of course, it looks like you got a little friend in the background. I take it you're at Matt's house. I'm assuming, working a little office there. Another game, and I mentioned this earlier about the district and how it was set up. Wimberley and Lago Vista are playing. This is another district matchup where in the regular season, this was a 3-point game. Wimberley was down by I think it was 4 heading into the fourth quarter. Ends up winning by 3. The only touchdown in the fourth quarter. Do you go against the Texans and how they've been playing of late, or does Lago Vista get it done this time? What do you think, Jackson?
Yeah, I think I'm sticking with Wimberley here. I think that they obviously have had had a great season. They've been, like you have said, like I just think that Wimberley is going to be too much for them. But really, I'm going for in this 4A D2 bracket. I'm going for my team that I've been kind of hyping up since we kind of looked at the bracket. And that was Silsby. They've been on a really good run here. You got Draylon Miller. They've got a great matchup this week with Cuero. I think that that's going to be an awesome game in the 4A bracket. But yeah, I do think Wimberley will get it done, and then I think you'll see Wimberley and Silsby in that semifinal matchup.
Just to bring them up, you're kind of, I don't want to call them under the radar team, but maybe Cinderella team. Of course, if you're asking me though, I think Carthage is still that favorite. They've looked nigh unbeatable, so far in these playoffs. So they have a matchup against Pleasant Grove. So we'll see how that one goes. I'm looking through these other brackets here. One that's going to be interesting for me: Smithson Valley taking on College Station in Region 3 of 5A D1. The really kind of big question surrounding this game is the health of the Smithson Valley quarterback. Let me get you his name here if you give me 1 second. So I was at that game, and in the fourth quarter, here we go. His name is, let me get to it here. Chase Senelek. If I said the last name wrong, I apologize. But got hurt early in the fourth quarter of that game with that win against Fulshire. Looked like it was the shoulder. There's been really no news on that front on if he's going to play or not. You would think with a shoulder injury and the way it looked that he might be done. So what's that offense going to look like without him in there if he indeed does not play? We'll say this: the defense looked amazing against Fulshire, and if the defense can play like that, then it's going to be, they might be able to, get by without him. But College Station, they kind of put a whooping on Georgetown, who Georgetown had beat them earlier in the year, and College Station came to play. I mean, without Marquise Collins, they're back in the regional final once again. What do you make of their run, Jackson?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize sometimes when your leader goes down, a team's able to kind of rally around and put together another great season. That's what College Station's done. You've got, I believe it's Arrington Maiden at quarterback, or Aiden Maiden at quarterback. He's had a really good year. He's really flipped the script since the beginning of the year where he had some trouble, and that College Station team has really been rolling. I think, though, that Smithson Valley, I would have to give them the edge in this game. They beat a Fulshire team that has been lighting it up here in the Houston area, that really has kind of been the surprise in the Houston area and had been dominating teams all year in one of the better districts in 5A. So I really like Smithson Valley in this one. I think they're going to rely on the run. I think they're going to rely on their big boys up front, led by Colton Thomason, who's committed to Texas A&M. But I think that their offensive line and their defensive line are going to be too much for this College Station team this week. And I think that Smithson Valley is one of these San Antonio teams that makes it into the state Final Four.
How about this team right here I'm about to mention to you? All the way in 5A D2 Region 3, Fort Bend Marshall. This is a team where, like, last year they get bounced, I think in the first round, if I'm not mistaken. First or second round, I think it was first round, and it was quite kind of a shock. And it's like, what kind of Fort Bend Marshall team are we going to get? And lo and behold, we got a Fort Bend Marshall team that is absolutely wrecking. They haven't lost since their week 2 loss to Crosby in overtime, and they've just been on an absolute tear. I mean, the most points they've given up since that loss, that 21 loss, was they gave up 21 points in their last district game against Dayton, which they won 52-21. Gave up 18 points last week to Lake Creek, where they scored 55. And now they get to play Port Neches Groves, who they beat 35-14 earlier in the year. I mean, is this coming up where it's looking like it might be a Fort Bend Marshall Liberty Hill State semifinal? Jackson, what do you think on this?
Yeah, that Port Neches Grove Fort Bend Marshall game earlier this year was actually really close going into, I believe, the fourth quarter, or maybe even late in the third quarter. And then Port Neches Grove fumbled. Fort Bend Marshall took it back for a touchdown. They forced a 3-and-out and then scored another touchdown, which made the lead. I believe it was 3 touchdowns then. So I think this is going to be a really good matchup for Fort Bend Marshall. But how they've been playing as of late, they've just looked dominant. Their D-line is getting active. They're in the backfield. Their DBs are solid in coverage. And on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, you just got speed all over the field. And if you're not ready to play with it, I thought that Lake Creek team was going to be able to hang with them, but I mean, early you could tell that the speed was just too much. So I think Fort Bend Marshall is going to use their weapons. I think that they're going to dominate and win this game, and I do think it's going to be a really good matchup against Liberty Hill. I think that I'm interested to see how Liberty Hill's offense is able to do against that Fort Bend Marshall defense if that's the matchup we get. But yeah, I think Fort Bend Marshall will take care of business this week, and we'll get a really great semifinal matchup next week.
Yeah, you hate to kind of look ahead when they still have to play the games in front of them, but I think if you're a fan of Texas high school football, you're kind of licking your lips a little bit about that potential matchup of Fort Bend Marshall and Liberty Hill. So we'll be happy to talk about that one next week if it does indeed happen. Before we get out of here, Jackson, maybe any last thoughts, any last kind of predictions as games kick off tonight? What about Fort Bend Christian? Do they have any chance against, I believe it's Dallas Christian, this weekend for the TAPS
No,
championship?
so they will be playing Fort Worth All Saints. I think
That's
this
the
Fort
one.
Bend Christian team has had a chip on their shoulder all year. They lost to Second Baptist, who was their district rival in the semis last year after winning district for the first time this year. This year they flipped the script. Second Baptist wins district. Fort Bend beats them in the semifinal game and beats them bad, beats them 35-7. I think this Fort Bend Christian team really has a really good shot to take that state title trophy home. They play tomorrow at 12, and that's definitely one I'll be watching. Just two other games that I have circled for the weekend will be Duncanville versus Westfield. I think this is another big matchup. Can Westfield take on a Duncanville team that has really looked dominant? I got to watch them play the Woodlands last week, and just on defense, they're ridiculous. They're in the backfield a lot. They are active in the passing game. That Duncanville team has looked as good as they have in the past, maybe even better than the previous teams. So very excited to see how that Westfield offense with Preston Hatter has really been the story in Houston and the offense for offensive player in the Houston area. I'm really interested to see how he and that Westfield offense are able to do against that Duncanville defense. And then can that Duncanville defense stop the run and stop Caden Durham from going off, because he's been phenomenal this season. So that's another game I'll be looking at. And then I'm also going to be watching that Prosper game. I've got family who live in Prosper. So I'll be rooting for Prosper to get it done and make that state Final Four as well, I believe, for the first time in program history.
Well, there you have it, folks. Jackson with his predictions. Let's go ahead and get out of here. We got some games to get to. This game's happening tonight, tomorrow, and Saturday. I'll be at Westlake and Brennan on Saturday. I know you're going to North Shore, Tascasita tomorrow. Got some great games, man. I can't wait to see how all this unfolds. But again, before we get out of here, give us some shout outs, Jackson.
Yeah, I'm going to shout out the VYPE team. We're going to be busy. It's going to be a busy weekend. We're going to be out covering games. On Saturday, we've got a media day out in Crosby. On Sunday, I'll be going somewhere and doing some recruiting. But just shout out to everyone. It's been a busy past couple of weeks, past couple of months. But it's Texas high school football playoff season, so shout out to all those teams as well. Whether it's going to be your last game, whether you move on. Congratulations to all the teams that have made it this far, and excited to see who makes it on to the next round to the semis.
Yep, and shout out all the teams playing this week. Hey, even if you don't make it out of this weekend, getting to the regional finals is never easy. I mean, I think my school has only been to the fourth round like 3 times in their history. Some teams have never been this far in their history. So getting here is, it's not easy. So be happy for what you did. But hey, go fight for it. Go fight for to get that state semis. That's a once in a lifetime opportunity right there. So until next week, where we'll talk about the state semis and break down the state championships for TAPS. I'm Wac, and that's Jackson, and we'll see you at the games.